Alan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll start shortly.
From somebody that I spoke my heart tomorrow. I'm not one getting out of it.
Yeah, man.
I'll pitch you.
Good morning. We'll call our February 22nd, 2024 meeting to order. This public meeting of the Philadelphia Board of Pensions and Retirement is being conducted in person in the board's conference room at the board's offices on the 16th floor of 2 Penn Center. Pursuant to section 21-1503 of the Philadelphia Code, electronic recordings of this meeting will be made available through Microsoft Teams conference technology and by an audio recording. An electronic recording will be made available to the public online on the board's website without charge within 10 days. Please note that you consent to such recording by attending, participating, or speaking at the meeting. First order of business is a motion to adopt the rules that the board has approved and used for our in-person public meetings that are also electronically recorded. The purpose is to help ensure that accurate and complete audio or audiovisual recordings of the meeting occur to comply with the code requirements. Item 1 is a motion to adopt the procedures for today's meeting. Has been made executive. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll go to the roll. Brian.
Aye.
Francois.
Approved.
Marcia. Approved. Paul.
Approved.
Andrea. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
Adam.
Approved.
Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 2, approval of the meeting minutes. January 25th, 2024. Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian. Francois.
Same.
Marcia. Approved. Paul.
Approved.
Graham. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
Adam. Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries 7-0 with 1 note of abstention. Item 3, motion to approve 96 pension applications and 54 withdrawal applications were made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian. Francois.
Approved.
Marcia. Approved. Paul.
Approved.
Andrea. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
Adam.
Approved.
Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. Section 4, case 4A, the motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Linda Long is made and properly seconded. Any discussion on this case?
Director, can I make a motion to extend this to hearing time? Let's get additional information on it.
We've had a request for a revised motion to send 4A to hearing panel. Is there a second?
Second.
I don't recognize Francois. A revised motion was made to send case. Revised motion to send case 4A to a hearing panel was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on revised motion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian. Francois.
Approved.
Marcia. Approved. Paul.
Approved.
Andrea. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
Adam.
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
The revised motion carries unanimously. Case 4B, motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Kevin Dubus was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on this case? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian. Francois.
Deny.
Marcia.
Deny.
Paul.
Abstain.
Andrea. Willie.
Abstain.
Adam.
Abstain.
And Carol.
Abstain.
The motion fails 0-3 with 5 noted abstentions. Case 4C, a motion to approve service-connected disability benefits for Tamika Delaney was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on case 4C? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Brian.
I approve.
Francois.
I'm sorry, this is C.
4C.
I approve.
Marcia. Approved. Paul.
Approved.
Andrea. Approved. Willie.
Approved.
Adam.
Approved.
Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. Case 4D, the motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Robert Jonas was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4D? Hearing none. Brian.
I'll abstain.
Francois.
Denied.
Marcia.
Deny.
Paul.
Abstain.
Andrea. Denied. Willie.
Abstain.
Adam.
Abstain.
Carol.
Abstain.
Motion failed 0-3 with 5 abstentions. Case 4E, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Kevin Overton is made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4D? Hearing none, Brian,
I approve.
Francois, Marcia,
Approve.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, approved, Willie,
Approve.
Adam,
Approve.
Harold.
Approve.
Motion carries unanimously. Case 4F, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for George Patterson was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4F? Hearing none, Brian,
I approve.
Francois,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, approved, Willie,
Approve.
Adam,
Abstain.
and Harold.
Approved.
Motion carries 5-2 with one noted abstention. Case 4G, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Patrick Scanlon was made and seconded. Any discussion on 4G? Brian,
I approve.
Francois,
Approve.
Marcia,
Approved.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, approved, Willie,
Approve.
Adam,
Approve.
and Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. Case 4H, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Louise Boyd was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4H? Hearing none, Brian,
I approve.
Francois,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Approve.
Andrea, approved, Willie,
Approve.
Adam,
Abstain.
and Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries 5-2 with one abstention. Case 4I, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Kenneth Biggs was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4I? Hearing none, Brian,
I'll abstain.
Francois,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Abstain.
Grant, and Willie,
Abstain.
Adam,
Abstain.
and Carol.
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-3 with 5 abstentions. 4J, a motion to approve service-connected disability benefits for Joseph Marcelewski was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4J? Hearing none, Brian,
I'll abstain.
Francois,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andrea, Billy,
Abstain.
Adam,
Abstain.
and Carol.
Abstain.
The motion fails 0-3 with 5 abstentions. 4K, the motion to approve service-connected disability benefits for James Miller was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4K? Brian, Swab,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Abstain.
Rich, Willie,
Abstain.
Adam,
Abstain.
Carol.
Abstain.
The motion fails 0-3 with 5 noted abstentions. 4L, the motion to approve service-connected disability benefits for Cherie Morgan was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on case 4L? Brian,
I'll abstain.
Francois,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Abstain.
Dre, Willie,
Abstain.
Adam,
Abstain.
and Carol.
Abstain.
Motion fails 0-3 with 5 abstentions. 4M, a motion to approve service-connected disability benefits for Michelle Queen Tyler made and properly seconded. Any discussion on case 4M?
Jackie, they won't there. I don't know that it changes the outcome. This is another case of a doctor getting outside their lane. In his opinion, Dr. Inzerillo, page 3. She's not disabled. She had retirement plans in 2023 prior to this accident based upon her age and years of service. I don't see the relevance of that. We're asking these doctors, you can get injured while you're recovering. I have retirement plans too, 13 years from now. I could get injured. Right? So I don't care for these doctors. We see it over and over again. I just want to make a point in case that was going to. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any other discussion on 4M? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll call. Brian,
I'll stay.
Francois,
Deny.
Marcia,
Deny.
Paul,
Abstain.
Andrea, Willie, Adam, and Carol. Motion fails 0-3 with 5 abstentions. Case 4N, a motion to approve service-connected disability benefits for Earl Smith was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 4N? Hearing none. Brian?
I'll just.
Must you abstain, Brian?
Anytime.
Stephen, here. Francois?
Denied.
Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Abstain.
Andre? Billy? Adam? And Carol. Motion fails 0-3 with 5 abstentions. Brings us to old business in case 5A. Motion to approve the application for service connected disability for Joseph Barrios was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on case 5A? Hearing none. Brian?
I approve.
Francois?
Denied.
Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Approved. Willie?
Approve.
Adam? And Carol?
Approved.
The motion carries 5-2 with 1 abstention. Case 5B, a motion to approve the application for service connected disability for George Schmid was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 5B? Hearing none. Brian?
I approve.
Francois?
Approved.
Marcia?
Approved.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Approved. Willie?
Approve.
Adam? And Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. Case 5C, motion to approve the application for service connected disability benefits for William Coogan was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on 5C? Hearing none. Brian?
I approve.
Francois?
Denied.
Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Approved.
Andrea? Willie?
Approve.
Adam?
Abstain.
And Carol.
Approved.
The vote was 4-3 with 1 abstention. As the chair, I will vote to deny, which makes it a 4-4 tie with 1 abstention. And so the motion for 5C fails. Don't take it like. A motion to approve the application for service connected disability benefits for Marlene White. She's made and properly seconded. Any discussion on case 5D? Hearing none, go to the roll. Brian?
Denied.
Francois?
Denied.
Marcia?
Denied.
Paul?
Denied.
Andrea? Willie?
Denied.
Adam?
Abstain.
And Carol.
Denied.
Motion fails 0-7 with 1 noted abstention. Brings us into new business and the executive order.
The state order was on site for a few days. It seemed to be lining everything up. The work by should be there. The audit team, this, so. See the results. So Josh Stein, our chief compliance officer, is working on a program to provide trustee training in the area of fiduciary duty. That should happen sometime in the next couple of months. The progress and health of the pension fund, you'll hear from the actuary today on the current status of the pension fund. We did make a presentation to the mayor and officials surrounding the mayor and the chief of staff, Ms. Myers. It was very well received. So the mayor thanks them for the good work. So medical panel RFP is in the final stages. We did send it over to OEO. Once that's done, it should be posted shortly there. So I'll keep you posted on that. If we can make, people, any medical providers that may be interested in doing service for the board, we will let you know when it's interested and you can let them know. Check that. So, there's a couple things in the materials. Papers is having they're having a meeting in Harrisburg, which is May 21st and 23rd. Part of the program incidentally involves the fiduciary duty, so attend that. trade and get fiduciary duty. Also, if the board is interested in approving, we usually send Sharon Phillips to the workers impacted workers comp seminar in Harrisburg each year. A lot of the service connected disability work interacts with workers compensation, so we found that it's worthwhile. So it's just a motion for the board. We will actually Sharon attend that event this year.
Permission from the board, right?
Before we, did NC spend their information of the conference committee?
It did, Congress that was approved last month.
Or was it? Okay. I thought that the women's comp, okay, never mind.
That's that was to be the update, that registration opened yesterday. Women's conference. I haven't received anything else.
The women's comp was NAS. Right,
That's right.
Right.
You received information yesterday that registration opened yesterday. I think there's 2 folks that are going to that.
oh, you see, so NC was,
I didn't receive that.
okay.
There's a motion for the workers' comp that you, papers.
I make a motion for the workers' comp to pay.
Second.
Motion to approve the papers and work with the conferences and the trainings, just made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Brian? Francois? Martha?
Approved.
Paul? Andrea? Approved. Willie? Adam?
Approved.
And Karen. Motion carries unanimously.
I have another question, your friend, so is Sharon on who you want to send for this?
Yes.
So she don't have like a backup or nothing like that, they may have to fill in or should know nobody else?
I think we offered it to this, but.
Okay, okay, all right.
Any other new business? Okay, results of litigation summary, Adam, any updates from the board?
The cases should be in the packet, but no specific updates.
Motion to adjourn is made and properly seconded, then move into the third call. The first item for deferred comp is the approval of minutes from our January 2024 meeting. Motion to approve the minutes was made and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christine? Brian? Francois?
Approved.
Marcia? Approved. Paul?
Approved.
Willie? Adam?
Approved.
And Carol.
Hmm.
Motion carries unanimously, and we'll go to item 2.
Good morning, everyone. Deferred compensation plan assets as of January 31st, the ending balance was $1,860,969,200. $969,218. Very slight change from the previous month. In terms of participants that have account balances, there's 25,563. That's 16 less than the month of December. We also saw a slight decrease in active participation. The total count ended in January at 19,752. 77% of the participants that have an account balance are actively contributing. New enrollments, we received 319. That is a significant number of new enrollments ever achieved in the month of January. Normally in a quarter, we would get that kind of phenomenal result. So Brad is going to talk a little bit about how we achieve those successful numbers. But thank you again to the board trustees for your support and continued, collaboration with us to raise the awareness of the importance of deferred compensation plan. Inactive participants, 5,811. That's 2 more than previous month. Philadelphia Parking Authority, there are now 547 participants that have an account balance. We received new enrollments of 8 in the month of January. Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation has 42 participants. That's one new in January. Regarding the 401A plan, the ending balance of January was $3,325,589, which with 1,125 participants, that's one less than the month of December. Call volumes, the numbers, we received a high number of calls in the month of January. It's we received about 3,406. That's an increase of 662 more than the month of December. And the reason why that is the case is people receive their statements and therefore their call volume upticks just in the month of January, which is aligned with what we've received in the past historical time in the month of January. Online accounts continue to grow. There are now 19,738 participants that have set up an online account. That's where the tools, education, and other information is there for your participants. 77% now have set an online account. Percentage option. In the month of January, there was 2,077% that elected a percentage contribution option. That's an increase of 33. We continue on the website to have a campaign regarding the importance and the value of having a percentage option. Roth 57 total count is 6,754. That's about 84 more than the previous month. The ending balance was at 56.8. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. If you do not, I'm going to pass it on to Brad to discuss the service activity. Questions?
Morning, everyone. So in the month of January, the local service team conducted 241 individual consultations, resulting in 150 enrollments with the local service team. There were 19 group events and workshops with 605 total attendees. Some of the highlights that Dina mentioned, the increase in new enrollment was the Fire Academy and Police Academy, both had classes of decent size during the month of January. As well, we handed out, we began distributing email to plan 10 and plan 15 members that are not members of the 457 plan. So that went out of the first January 12th. So we got some good enrollment numbers from that as well. So I believe that's the the noted increase in new enrollments for the month of January.
Right, who participated in the parking authority? Second order yesterday.
The Christina, one on our team, was over there for the day. I haven't spoken with her about how it went yet, but she.
So Shalene and Steve were there also. And she's probably already. I don't recall the festival, but the information session, people had tables. Pensions had a table there. Shahid indicated this morning that we're supposed to start at 1, it got here at 12:45. There were already people lined up. So probably talked to probably 100 people yesterday with various sorts of pension questions. So I assume your folks were also very busy.
I would imagine.
Yeah, so it was good work by Richie Laser putting that together. I'm glad it to the friends.
Absolutely. I think we're also going, I think they're doing a committee one down at the airport. I believe we're going to that as well. I did also want to thank Christy and Joe Rubin for, they had us over at the controller's office to do a seminar to their employees. They went very well, they're good attendance, and some folks going and watching. So,
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? That brings us to item 3.
Turning to the quarterly performance report for the municipal funds and the compensation plan, should have received a slightly updated report earlier this week. revenue. We've had some challenges with the target date funds related to the index performance. We corrected that. Advisory sports opening. Apologize for that inconvenience. You'll see on page 4, staff has a few recommendations as it relates to the deferred compensation plan. First, Harbor, which is one of the more popular funds in the plan, particularly the 457. We think they can remain on watch for now, but we know they're extremely favorably. Be prepared to recommend to take them on watch as soon as the next update. They now rank in the top decile on both a 1-year period and the most recent quarter. They also rank 26th over the 5 years. So certainly trending in the right direction. Mass Mutual, the mid-cap growth active option, we believe they should remain on watch. Underperforming in all but one listing period. We don't see its improvement. We will probably come back in the first quarter. We believe the board should explore alternatives. Staff prepared to do the research and bring recommendations at the next meeting for the Neuro-Pacific Growth Fund. The ranking in the bottom 30%. For all of the 1-year period for an active manager, members of paying fees like to explore better options for folks there. And then lastly, similar to Mass Mutual, we'd be prepared to come back in the first quarter with a recommendation if we don't see improvement for the board's only ESG or socially responsible option area. We're not prepared to make a recommendation to review yet, but I would say if we don't see it for the next quarter, that's we will have this alternatives. Happy to take questions on any of that and any of the other things. But if we were entertain a motion on the Pacific, we would come back as soon as the next meeting, with options there.
Any questions or motion from the board regarding search?
I'll make the motion to food search to replace the Euro Pacific. It's been one.
No. Second.
The motion regarding search was made and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie.
First.
Brian. Francois.
Approved.
Marcia.
Approved.
Paul.
Approved.
Willie.
Approved.
Adam.
Approved.
And Carol.
Okay.
Motion carries. Item 4.
Yeah, just a brief update on the Vanguard money market fund report quarter of last year. As you know, this is the fund that the group established to collect revenue, rebates, etc., that are collected by the plan. It only be spent for the exclusive purpose of providing benefits to the participants or defraying any reasonable expenses. At the end of December, there was a little over $170,000 in that account. You'll note at the bottom of the page, the balance dropped to $143,050 at the end of January. That was because the staff paid for the fiscal year 22 plan audit. Fairly recently paid for the fiscal year 21 audit. We did receive more income into the fund through the end of the year, a little over $23,000. Brad reminded me yesterday, the last time we did a pro rata rebate for that $1 million was in November, I believe in 2021. So there's still a long ways away from that. I anticipated, any of the expenses outside of all the response here.
The account has to be what amount of money before you get,
Normally done around the number of dollars. And the account balance gets to around $1 million to make the information more, meaningful and not create, administrative work for a minimum. So the last time we did, it was supposed to be end of 2021.
No question, from the board on item 4. Hearing none, a motion to adjourn, deferred comments made and properly seconded. We're gonna take a 5-minute recess to give the actuary a chance to get set up and everyone a chance to stretch their legs. So if we can be back in 5 minutes, that'd be great.
She clapped right back.
He clapped right back. Let me
As we pre session, the first item is approval of the minutes from January. Their motion.
So I'm gonna make a motion, we're gonna, just gonna be like Jackie, where Jackie at?
Yeah, well.
She left, she got the power, or she ain't. This over, no, she texted today, she texted today, boy, she put us in our go pay.
That's
Yeah, but you
did, Brian. That's gonna cost me somewhere.
Brian.
I also.
Paul. Approved, Nay. Christie. Adam. Marcia.
Approved.
Carol.
Approved.
Motion carries. Now, we go to the highlighted year, actuarial report. And our friends from Chiron are here. So, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, everybody. Good morning. We're excited to be here today. We have great news and we're going to jump right into it. So typically our presentations will do an overview of the valuation results. We're here to present for July 2023 valuation. We do annual valuations. It's a snapshot date of July 1. We'll look at historical trends. We'll look at some of the key metrics just to see, how do we get to where we're at. Then we'll look at the historical trends in context of the risk to the time. We'll review the results, the updated results for 2023. And then we'll go into discussion of the discount rate. Each year, the board has met and looked to make small changes and decreasing the discount rates and reducing the investment risk. And then we can jump to our projection model and we could do some forward-looking projection.
That's
So you'll have an
it.
update.
I sorry, I've got one thing. I've got to introduce our newest member of City Council, Ellen Moorhead, Council CFO. Joining, welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
We do have some new faces here, so if you're going to be fast, please let us know. If you have any questions, stop us any time. We're here to answer your questions. So starting with the overview and the assets. On a market value basis, as of July 1, 2023, the average return was 8.05%. We compare this to our 7.4% assumption in the prior year. So the assets actually increased almost up by $900 million, 6.91 billion, went up to 7.8 billion. When we look at asset values for the pension fund, we always look at a net of pension adjustment fund because assets that may be in the pension adjustment fund are specifically retiree benefits. When looking at contributions, we'll typically try to smoothen out any volatility in the market. So that would be based on what we call an actuarial value of assets. The actual value of assets is the market value of assets, smoothing out the volatility over a 10-year period. So on an actuarial basis, the return was 6.49%, so lower than the 7.4 that we were expecting because there's historical losses that are still yet to be recognized. Regardless, for the ADA, the actual assets still went up by about 800 million from 7.18 billion to 7.98 billion. Because that 6.49% is less than our assumed return of 7.4, there was a net asset loss. The loss was 53 million, and that gets built into the unfunded liability. We usually compare the actuarial and market value. We want those to stay close, even though they're smoothing. We want them to stay within a plus or minus 20% corridor. So when we make that comparison, the actual assets actually way higher than the market asset. The gap was 178 million this year, down from 271 million last year. So that was 93 million in gap or deferred losses that got recognized in this current year. So when we look at the ratios itself, the actual market value ratio was 102.3% compared to 103.9%. That's good. Deferred losses are being recognized here. There was no additional assets going into the pension adjustment fund. Just as a reminder, the PAF excess earnings above the, 100 basis points above is the rate of return, half of return is stored in the pension settlement fund.
For a second, do we trustees know what the pension investment fund is? This time to ask that.
Yes.
I think it'd be a good idea for you to summarize that. Make it more clear that.
Sure. So, each year, we talk about the actuarial asset value. The pension adjustment fund is in the code, any excess earning based on a 5-year smoothing would be used specifically to pay, for one-time retirement benefit. So we are gonna go into a roll forward later in the slide to show you exactly how much money is in there in the last 2 years that the distribution's going in. But really what we're tracking is that asset return value on a 5-year smoothing. So we'll, when we get to that slide, we'll talk a little bit more about that. 50% of the excess earnings typically would go into that fund. And then the board would meet and review the criteria and, determine who gets, the distributions on that, who and how much the distributions are. Moving on to the actual liability. So on the liability side, each year we would compare, what's the actual liability to what we expected. We'll make a comparison to where did we start last year? What did we expect based on our assumptions and compare it to where we're actually at? So, the actual liabilities were higher by 117 million compared to expected. This is demographic experience. We will go into the sources of this later in the presentation, but to remember 170 million compared to the $12.8 billion liability, that's 1.35%. So still within what we would have expected. Each year, the board would approve assumption changes. So at last year's February meeting, the board did approve a discount rate change, decreasing 5 basis points from 7.4 to 7.35%. Anytime the discount rate decreases, the liabilities increase. So the liability increase is $60 million, and it's already reflected in the valuation results that we're presenting. And we can have a further discussion later in our slides to review further. Comparing the assets to liability, what we call funded ratio, that is the ratio of the actuarial assets to the actuarial liability. And that went up from 57.6 to 62.2%, 4.6% increase in 1 year.
You were telling me beforehand, the last time you were about 60.
It was over 20 years ago, around the early 2000s, right after the bond money was put in, and it was sustained at about 70 63. Actually, it was 63% around 2000. So this has been the best funded position the fund.
Yeah, and to Chris's point, that's when we're receiving 9% return.
Exactly. And it's far more resilient. Discount rate, we're at 7.35%. Net cash flow, the fund actually is close to zero and positive in years where extra contributions are coming in, which makes it very resilient to the market ups and downs. So, you know, in the future years, if there were investment losses, you're not going to see the huge dips because you have the fund is more resilient with cash flow, the benefit payments, expenses, and the expected return being at 7.3, there's a higher probability that you're going to meet that expected.
On that, Rob, just to learn from history, how fast did it drop right back?
Yeah, because we had
We
the
know the reasons.
town bubble.
We have,
Yeah,
right, so we don't want to.
so we have to keep with it.
Yeah, keep with it.
Agree.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah.
You'll hear over and over.
Yes.
That's really important. And we're looking at historical trends, but part of this improvement in funding ratio has been slow and steady.
Mhm.
And it's been the discipline of sticking to the RP contributions, making excess contributions. And a plan that was put in place now almost 8 to 10 years ago, you can actually see it working. So it's definitely a great story, and the key is to stay on track and stay. So in looking from how did we get that from 57 to 62%, we started, the first thing is the experience gain. We know each year that our assumption is going to try our best to make a reasonable expectation of what the assets liability be, but in actuality, it's going to be different. So the loss overall decreased the funding ratio by 1.3%, both asset and liability cost. The assumption change of the 5 basis point decrease also further decreases the funding ratios by 0.3%. And then I'm going to jump to number 6. Each year that contributions come into the system, there is an expectation that you're going to pay off this unfunded liability. And so this progress of the pay down of the unfunded based on what is required, which is the MMO, the minimum contribution that's required, that paid down some of the unfunded and increased the funding ratio to 2.4%. Then on top of that, we have the revenue recognition policy, which is designed to contribute at a higher level than the MMO. So the contributions that came in under RRP further increased at 1.2%. And then in the past year, there was contributions that came into the system in excess of even the RRP. We'll talk about this. There was about $329 million that came in over and above not just the MMO, but the RRP, which further increased the funding ratio to 100%.
The benefit of the trustee, people explain what the memo is.
Yes, and actually that's on the next slide, so we could. So when we talk about contributions today, we're gonna talk about 3 different measures. The minimum municipal obligation, MMO, is the minimum required under Act 205. This is what the city wants to pay. And any contribution measure that we look at, there's 3 pieces to it. There is the normal cost, which is the annual accrual of cost of benefits. The normal cost each year that a member stays in the system is an active participant will accrue an additional benefit for an additional year of service, and to the extent that the pay increases, then the benefit. Members make contributions and they're going to pay part of that normal cost, and the city is going to pay the remainder. So when we look at the contributions that the city is going to pay, we're talking about the city's portion of that normal cost. And then we'll add the annual administrative expenses because we need to fund that running the system, the admin expenses. And then the big piece is we have an unfunded liability. There has to be a pay down schedule. Now that's an amortization period. Under MMO, there are specific periods by which the unfunded liabilities need to be paid down. It's a layered approach, so each year that there's a gain or loss, you need to pay that off over 20 years. If there's an assumption change, it needs to be paid off over 15 years. So the MMO is the minimum required, the sum of the normal cost, the amortization of the unfunded.
And what does that mean? Again, what does that mean in terms of getting to full funding? Like when you go through the funding scenarios, we talk about each mean in terms of.
Yeah, so when we get to, we will have projections and we'll look at exactly what the full funding the differences will be based on the different contributions.
But the MMO is slow, right? That's,
The MMO is
and
slow.
there's more risk.
It's a longer period.
Yeah.
Yes. The RRP was designed to pay the unfunded sooner. So by nature of that design, you're going to reach 100% faster because RRP is more money coming in. It's pay now, pay later. How do you want to do it? RRP is paying it faster than what we require in the MMO, which means you will reach full funding faster.
Can we just be clear? The MMO, while less money from the city's general fund today will cost the city more over time than paying the RRP, getting that unfunded debt.
Yes, because if you're gonna pay later, you're gonna also pay interest. So the sooner you pay, the faster it is. And then the big thing we'll be talking about is the net cash flow. The contributions coming in, if they can meet benefit payments, net cash flow is back 0, you're gonna be more resilient to investment.
And you'll show this later, but you get to the point where the unfunded is gone and there's a big drop in the payment.
Yeah,
more
so one-
the RRP.
Right, when we look at the pieces, once that unfunded liability is paid out, amortization drops to 0, then you drop down to the actual cost of the plan, which is the annual accruals that members are earning each year.
Brian, do you paying enough fee is funding better, quicker, which gives person with the power, the ability to only for better rates and money that's the contract. So that saves the city.
Yeah, I see that, I love that.
Costing them for the county was good.
So the pension funding policy really has been something that has been tracked. It was in place before MMO, so prior to 1984, the city hasn't paid on the funding policy in many years, but we continue to track it and we'll see it for comparison, what the different measures will, how the different measures impact funding.
Smaller between RRP and something else.
So a little bit more about RRP because RRP is similar to MMO, but is designed to pay down the unfunded sooner. Part of the additional revenue that's coming in is the sources include sales tax revenue that's coming, that's being added into the pension system. And members are paying additional contributions. Police and fire are paying additional contributions, municipal and paying based on tier, the higher the pay, the more the contribution into the system. So anytime additional money comes into the system, you're expected to see future contributions be reduced if you're sticking to the same funding model. So if you were just sticking to MMO, but these additional sources are paying more, then that would just reduce the. But when this was put in place, the idea was that this additional revenue should not be reducing the city's future contributions. It should be paying the unfunded too. So the way we did that, the mechanism to make sure that that actually happens is any revenue that's coming in from these extra sources is tracked separately in a notional account. It's not a separate asset investment account. It's just a notional. We track it each year with the additional monies that come in, and it grows with the market asset return. And when we calculate the RRP contribution, we subtract that from the assets. So the assets, we look at what the assets would have been without this money. And the city's contribution on the RRP will then be based as though these additional monies never came in. So the city technically is paying what they would have paid at these additions. So this notional account is getting pretty big, 450 million last year, increases to 598 million this year. And that's, we're going to continue to see those large increases now because the gap between the RRP and MMO is going to continue to increase as the RRP continues to pay at a higher level and the MMO is going to go down. When you're paying in more now, you're going to see under the MMO, the contribution future contribution. So what were the actual numbers? The MMO last year, just a reminder, when we do a valuation, there's a 2-year lag. So when we do a 2023 valuation, we're actually calculating the contribution value coming in for fiscal year ending 2025. So the MMO for fiscal year ending 2024 was 672 million. It went down to 653 million. We expect that to go down because we're putting in more money than the MMO is required. As a percent of payroll, another way of looking at the cost, because the contributions coming into the system are kind of based on active membership. So, and the city for budgeting, we'll be looking at payroll costs and additional costs as a percent of that payroll. So that decreases from 23.9% as a percent of payroll to 21.7%. The RRP contribution still continues to stay fairly steady, small decrease, 743 down to 751 million for the 2025 year. But as a percent of payroll is also going up each year, both due to pay increases and, the membership itself. So the percent of payroll, it goes down from 37.4 to 37%. So any questions on that before we move to the historical trends? And in fact, it is going to be talking about the program. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Here on slide 7, we are showing a historical kind of the participation. So showing head counts by status from years 2014 to 2023. On the bottom, we show actives. In the middle there, we show the drops and the term vested participants. And then on the top, we have retirees. This all corresponds with the left-hand axis. And on the right-hand axis, we show payroll, which is designated by that black line going across. The number you see up top is what we call the support ratio. It's a measure of plan maturity. And it's the ratio of non-active members to the number of active members in any given year. And we'll see here the trend in support ratio has been relatively flat from beginning to end. There's a little bit of motion going down until we get to 2021. And then, as you'll remember, kind of COVID happened and active count went a little bit down. You'll see payroll tick down a little bit in this year too. And then kind of staying steady there through 2023. But looking from 2014 to 2023, the support ratio has remained relatively stable, and we'll compare this against the universe of public plans in a later slide. And we'll see that the system is really reversing the trend that is out there in the universe where more plans are growing more mature. The system is staying relatively stable.
Can you explain why that matters?
Yes, so the inactives are associated with the benefits going out of the plan, and the actives are associated with the revenue base supporting the system. So when you have, let's say, a higher number here, you've got a lot of benefit payments compared to the actives that are supporting the revenue of the system in terms of contributions. So we definitely don't want that number to get too high, or that's indicative of a more mature plan with a higher risk of a negative cash flow because of these benefits coming out of the system.
When we think of support ratio, the industry red zone is about 25. When you get to that, then you're really getting to the point where, you know, it's a high risk system. So at 1.3, we're pretty good.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and look at the historical trend of assets and liabilities. The gray bars here are the actuarial liability, and we'll see the two lines, the blue being the market value of assets. That's just a point in time on each valuation date, what the market value of assets is. And then the actuarial value of assets, as Anu had explained, is a more smooth value, smooth gains and losses over 10 years, and doesn't have as large fluctuations. And then the percentage you'll see up top is the funded ratio, and this is essentially the actuarial value of assets versus that gray bar, the liability. And we use the actuarial value of assets because, again, it's more smooth numbers, so you don't see these large changes. So starting at 45.8, improving to 62.2%. And this is also during a time where the system has decreased their interest rate assumption from 7.8% to 7.35%, an action that increases liabilities. So as we'll kind of see when we look at the cash flows and the contributions, that these contributions are really what's allowing the system to progress in terms of funded ratio and even outpace the increase in liabilities that are coming from changing the discount rate.
Give it a sense that we did at 7.35 back in 2014, what that 100% would look like.
It would, well, so the idea is that it's more pronounced. The change would be more pronounced.
Yes.
What we were saying, like 3%, 3%.
So we would have gone from apples to apples, it's about 20%.
Yes, more or less.
And just to chime in, I think that's important. If you look at other public plans out there in the universe, what you've seen is a lot of plans that kind of remain relatively steady in terms of their funding ratio. They're making their contributions a little bit over a longer time than what Philly is doing now. While other plans may be a little bit higher funded at the moment, you haven't seen the significant improvement that Philly has had in a short time period.
We had more room to pick up. I got it to the point.
Because there was that large loss from the 2008 financial decline that was being recognized over 10 years. So that was very slow catch up, and it was kind of holding that asset value more steady, and the funding ratio wasn't improving that much. And then, I mean, contributions for the RRP started to first make an impact. Those started in the contributions and RRP may have started in 2016, but they're small enough to start to really impact 2018.
Right now it's hundreds of millions.
Next, we'll look at a historical trend of the cash flows. We'll see by the green bar is the contributions coming into the plan. The red bar is benefits and expenses being paid out by the plan. And we have a yellow bar, which is the net cash flow, which is essentially contributions by the benefits and expenses. And this could be positive or negative. Given. And then we also show net cash, or we show investment income as the blue line. So again, this is dictated by market returns. And then net cash flow as a percent of the market value of assets. And this line is important, especially in these earlier years when it's a negative cash flow. Essentially, 2014, 2015, the first 4% of asset returns would be going to keeping assets level. And then anything in excess, would be able to grow the assets. But now we see, again, starting in 2018, the year when those RRP contributions started getting paid on the RRP basis, we get at or above zero for the remainder of the period. So this is a big point to the resilience of the plan. When there isn't a negative cash flow, or when there is a negative cash flow, sorry, the system would have to go into investments and take money out there to pay for benefits and expenses. Now what we're seeing since 2018 and persisting through 2023 is that the contributions coming in are in excess of the benefits and expenses. So you don't have to go into the assets, pull out any money. It allows the assets to grow and work freely.
And we don't show a projection here, but it's been hovering around the zero mark, plus or minus, since 2017. And we expect that to continue in renewable funding. It hovers around zero. Of course, in 2023, there's a huge increase because of the excess 329.
You have something, I think, later that compares our cash flow to other.
Yes, we'll show
That's
net
pretty
cash
good.
flows against the public plan universe. Now we'll take a look at the MMO, the RRP, and the funding policy. And the funding policy, again, is we do continue to monitor, keep track of this, but the system is no longer paying based on the funding policy. It is paying based on the RRP, the green line as of, I believe, 2018. So we'll see here in 2016, 17, we don't have RRP, it didn't come into play yet. But the actual city contributions, denoted by the line going across, was right at the MMO, and then starting in 2018 is when we really start to see contributions exceeding the MMO and the RRP in these years. And again, this is what has been allowing the plan to have that positive cash flow since 2018, and what has been allowing that funded ratio to steadily improve in a time where the interest rate assumption is decreasing, which does increase the liabilities. I'll pause here if there's any questions on this. Slide 11, we'll take a look at the required contributions by stores. So at the bottom here, we have the normal cost. The gray bars are the normal cost. This is kind of what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. This is a very stable, predictable amount based on the amount that participants accrue in a given year, the benefits that they accrue, the service that they accrue. And it's been very, very steady at 90 to 95 million every single year. The blue bar here in the middle is the amortization payment under the MMO. So that's because the system is not 100% funded, this exists. But as as the system pays above the MMO and even above the RRP, this blue amount is going to shrink and decrease, and to the point where once this system is 100% funded, the goal would be to only be paying that normal cost in the future once again 100% funded. And we'll go through the projections to see it like when this happens exactly, but that is the goal of the system.
8 years, right?
believe it's probably two.
Yeah, and the RFP is 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really close.
So on that, so we do this every year.
Yes.
A lot of new
I
people.
thought it was coming.
It's coming. Because there's new people that will be in high-level meetings with this administration, making decisions about financial policy. So the normal cost is what it would cost the city if there was no unfunded liability for the pension, which I think is about 91, you say 92 or 95 million, irrelevant, right? That's what the city would pay. That's what the true cost of this pension plan is to the city if there was no unfunded, if there were no blue lines on that screen. So if we go back to the MMO, that blue line only gets bigger. The gray bar stays stable. You can go back to the 80s. That gray bar has been stable at 91, 92 million. So in approximately 8 years, if we continue down this path, I think we're going to see that.
Yeah.
The general fund will be contributing 91 million instead of 820, 50, whatever.
I
it
think
is.
91 is all. I think that unfortunately is power.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I think that includes water.
So to use your words, we're investing in Philadelphia's future. The general fund will have significant, better capability to do whatever the administration's want to do if we stay on this path. Fair? And it's no, I mean, I really, you've done this since you've taken over. It's been great. I was here back
All of
when we
us have
were
done
at
it.
44%.
We can pull it together.
We were going the wrong way. Fees were high, our funding was going down. So if we stay on this path, it's going to open up a significant portion of income for the city in 8 years. I think. So, I just want to make sure I understood that right.
Wait for the court loud, right? Wait for the court loud.
Now I get it.
Um,
It goes to the right axis, budget. So up here, in 2016, that was close to 40%. It's close to 30, and really, the cost of the plan to the city is more like 10. That's right.
So every single year, and since we've been working with the system, we always try to identify and assess risks, and these risks have been, the risks posed to the system have been the same for however long it's been. Investment risk.
Not with risk here. You got no investment risk.
Very true.
That's not investment risk.
Less investment risk. We're mitigating it very quickly. This is the potential for investment return to be different than expected. So this risk ties into the asset envelope. The longevity and other demographic risk. This is the potential for mortality and other demographic assumptions to be or experience to be different than expected. And this ties to our liabilities. And then we have assumption change risk, the potential for the environment to change significantly enough to really change the outlook of things. And this is why we do experience studies every single, I think it's 4 years. And just kind of really try and keep our finger on the pulse of what is happening in the system and what's happening in the world to just continue to.
When's the next one? The next.
So we did one 2 years ago, so.
After this, yeah.
2 places.
Exactly, speak to the benefit of those gradual consumption, at least for consumer areas.
Yes.
You know, well, it's gradual changes by investing shops.
Here we show the historical asset returns, going all the way back to 1995. The red line that's straight across there is the asset return assumption. So for this year, 7.35, that's what we've been, bringing down little by little, 5 basis points every year. And it was, I believe, 9%, back in 1995. So, essentially, in any given year, the plan was assuming to return 9% or 8% or 7.35%, which is now where we're at in 2023. The blue line shows the market value returns, and the green line is the actuarial value returns, which follows the trend of the market value, but again, smooths out those gains and losses over a 10-year period. And so that what we're trying to show here also is that in any given year, you're never going to hit that assumed rate of return exactly, but over a longer period of time, you hope to get very, very close. And so we see the geometric average return on the market value of assets, 6.95%. So in that ballpark of where we're at in terms of interest rates.
And that's really just the function of which date you get, right?
Yeah. It was February, it'd be a different. So. And then here we show the impact on funded status from liability changes. So the big ones here are the green bars and the blue bars, the green being the assumption changes and the blue being the liability gains and losses, the experience gains and losses. So anything above the 0 is items that increase the liability, and they have had that impact on the funded ratio that you see it using the numbers up top. So all these green bars that you're seeing, most of these are discount rate changes and experience study changes that have gone to increase the liabilities over time, but to create a better risk profile for the plan because of the fact that we're dropping these discount rates and making it more likely.
So you asked that question earlier about it. It's north of 5%, 5.2%. All from the funding ratio because of the assumption changes. Even though that's the right thing to do. Right. It reduces.
And then if you add up all these green bars, that is the change that,
That's what Fran just.
yeah, so that was, right there.
Yeah.
But you subtract it.
It does include the experience studies.
It's not.
Yeah, so it's not explicitly just the discount rate changes, but I say.
Right, so you have the
Yes,
other,
the-
like, reality rate changes that would come.
But again, just shows that if we were looking apples to apples on an interest rate assumption going back to 2014 to 2023, it's just the improvement is more pronounced than we're showing. In that because it was big on 7.8 in the earlier years and 7.35.
And less conservative mortality assumptions. There are a whole bunch of assumptions that are more conservative.
Right, yes, all moving that
The
direction.
big one in 2040, the big three are a lot of them.
Well, I'll pause here for any questions before I turn it over to Brett.
That's very helpful, thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm gonna take over here on slide 15. This slide kind of ties in a lot of the things we've already talked about together. So this is how the unfunded liability has changed in any given year. So the bars represent the various sources. Most of these we've already talked about. The investment gain loss, that's going to be in gold. Liability gain loss in gray. Assumption changes in purple. So those were the two things we just showed on the prior slide. But then it also ties in the contributions that are coming in. What's coming down the liability?
Let's see.
And how are we getting closer to fully funding the plan in the future? The net change or that black line, that's the aggregate of all of those bars together. And the trend that we've seen here is that line is going down, which means for the first 4 years, the aggregate was increasing the unfunded liability. Now in the last 6 years, we've been decreasing the unfunded liability. But we look more specifically at those first 4 to 5 years, investment gain loss, those were still recognizing 2008 investment losses. Again, that's over a 10-year period. So that did kind of dampen the fund in the first 4 or 5 years of the chart. Also, the red bars were a bit smaller. Again, we had significant negative cash flow. So you're paying a lot more interest. You're unable to pay down the unfunded liabilities as quickly as you wanted to. Look at the last 4 to 5 years. What sticks out is kind of those red bars again. Those red bars are a lot larger than the initial years. As Anu mentioned earlier, we expect to pay down the unfunded liability just by paying off, just paying the MMO. That's kind of the red bars there. The green bars, this is kind of the significant difference that we've seen in the last, again, the last 5 years. This is contributions above the MMO. So this is paying on the RRP, this is the sales tax, as well as the additional contribution that's coming into the plan. With that respect, in 2023, that was almost $500 million. You aggregate the last 10 years, you're talking about $1.1 billion in contributions from the city that have come in above the MMO, and that has made a significant impact Obviously here today and obviously going forward in the future.
Brad, if you go back to historical, actually, EAC, UAL, basically, the exact opposite of what we see in 2016, they were going up at almost every single year. I think it's the exact opposite. And when you set out to get gas, the net pension liability is literally since 2016. Often 1.6 billion dollars. That's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Prior to 2016.
Exactly. And of the 1.6, the 1.1 is just those green. And moving to slide 16 here, the next two parts, I mentioned earlier, we like to compare to what other public plans are kind of out there in the universe. So this is a survey of the public plan database. This has about 230 plans now, kind of throughout the US. US pension system represents about 95% of public assets as well as membership. So this is kind of a good representation of what other public plans are doing. The bars represent the central 90%. The light green, that's the bottom 5%. The light blue, that's the top 95%. And then the gold diamonds are what we're Philadelphia is. What we mentioned is Zach pointed out, this plan, not just in the last 10 years, the last 25 years, the gold diamonds are roughly in the same spot they were in 2001. So the plan was already a little bit mature, but they've kind of stayed in the last 20 years. As we can see, the median, we're kind of between the dark green and dark blue has increased over time as plans have become. Plans have become.
Other plans have become more mature.
Exactly.
We haven't become less mature.
Exactly. You kind of stay the even keel while other plans have kind of moved in that direction. The next slide we're going to talk about, and I think this is an important slide we've talked on before.
So wait a minute, just ask your question back on page 16.
Sure.
You have a footnote that says drop participants included as an active participants or support ratio in public plan database. So is that because they're no longer contributing to the pension fund? Because some of them are still
There's still active,
employees, they
right,
still
they're
active.
working, but not accruing additional benefits, but once you enter drop, you start getting your drop back. You can start receiving your benefits that goes into a drop account now. But you don't accrue any benefits.
Can you tell us what your contribution?
You only contributions like that.
And that's not the public plan database setup. This is not something that Chiron produces. That's just.
No, I just want to know, explain what it meant, that's all.
Oh, absolutely.
Clarity, yes, thank you.
Yep. So this is the net cash flow that we talked about. Again, similarly, the gold diamonds represent where Philadelphia is in terms of the net cash flow as a percentage of the market value of assets. You like to go back early to the early 2000s, where you see the net cash flow for Philadelphia is off the chart in the bottom 5%. So you can see you're looking at -5%, -6% in those early 2000s. That's, you know, that plays a huge kind of damp on the investment returns. You're basically using your investment returns just to meet your negative cash flow, and then the assets essentially do not grow going forward against your having superior returns. Flash forward again, starting in 2015, that's where we see.
Right, and that was with paying the MMO. You still have to negative cash.
Correct, and that was because of the severe underfunding.
But we're off the chart again, but the other way.
Right. So we've kind of flipped the script in the last 5 to 10 years, starting in 2015, moving mostly in the light blue, which is the 75th to 95th percentile, which is a great percentile of being in those public plans. Obviously, in 2023, have the superior year, plus 4% in terms of the net cash flow paid on the unfunded. And I just wanted to point out that all public plans in general have hovered around -2%. Not just in 2023, but dating back to 2001. So a lot of public plans, most of them are meeting their contributions, but they don't have necessarily the plan that Philadelphia has put in place and exceed that. And that's where you have seen other public plans just kind of stay half flat in this 22-year period long. Philadelphia is kind of flipped the script, you could say. Any questions, if any historical stuff, otherwise we'll jump into the, federation results. So the first slide, this basically takes a look at participation. A lot of these slides we're going to compare 2022, last year's valuation, with this year's 2023 valuation. The last column is the change between those two columns. Active participation, slightly down 0.3%. Still over 26,000 members, active members. That's been something that's been slightly declining over the last few years. Members who are in payment, that include retirees, survivors, disabled members, slight uptick from last year, but relatively stable in terms of those counts from last year. Terminated vested members, members who had a deferred benefit, those were down 6% from last year. Many of those members are starting to move into payment. And then finally, drop. We did see a bit of an uptick this year in terms of drop participation. It's about 15% from last year, about 300 members. So now we're about 2,200 members that are participating in drop this year. And we'll touch on that when we look at the demographic experience on the slide.
All your guys.
With that, when we aggregate all the totals together, total participation is still over 64,000 members in the Philadelphia system, up 2% from last year. The next section looks at salary. So salary is up 3.7% in aggregate from last year, almost $2 billion in terms of active salary payroll now amongst the plans. Average active salary up 4% from last year, up to about over $74,000 per active member. So even as active participation accounts have slightly dropped, we're obviously still seeing increases in payroll, increases in average salary as members do continue to receive salary increases. Something we'll touch on the next page again as we look at the demographic experience. And finally, when we look at benefits for members who are in payment, that retirees, survivors, disability members, about $848 million in terms of the benefits that are being paid out of the system, up about 2.4% from last year. And then an average monthly benefit up about 2.2%, which is now over $2,000 a month.
I just wanted to really compliment Chris staff. That's a lot of benefit payments to do cash management. You did a heck of a job on the cash management to ensure, as you alluded to earlier, that we're paying out of only cash and not taking out investments, planning months and months down the road to ensure that we don't have to, reduce our exposure to the market, especially in deposit. It really has an adverse impact. So Chris and staff good work with that. I know Tyrone that you monitored the cash flow, so I appreciate that.
There's jumping into slide 19, this is our demographic experience. And these are the changes that we see in population as it relates to our assumptions each year. So that means we're talking about retirement, termination, disability, mortality, and kind of what we expected versus what we actually saw. You mentioned earlier, our experienced net liability loss, 170 million for the year. Again, representing about 1.35% of the liabilities. So while the number is very large, the system itself is also large. This has less than a 1% impact on the ratio, so well within kind of reasonable measures for a year basis. When we break out the pieces of that 170 million, the two biggest pieces, the first one, the decrement's different than expected. That was about 90 million of 170. But the biggest piece coming from retirement and drop. So that's kind of a trend that we've seen since 2021. This COVID, post-COVID era, retirements have been much higher than expected, not necessarily just for this fund, but for a lot of funds, I think, across the country. So obviously, when we do the next experience study in 2 years, we'll kind of see what these trends are at that point, and then see if we need to revisit the retirement assumption. The second piece of that was.
So Rob, you remember what Ken used to say, cows up here.
Right,
Cows here, cows here.
She's hiding.
You can't hear.
it's tough to drop because you can't predict the behavior. You know,
Right.
Ken used to say, you know,
Yeah.
that's what.
Yeah.
Can't predict so much.
And then the second piece of that was the drop. So the drop members who go in the drop do start to receive benefits, and that's what we saw on the last page with the 15% increase from last year. We also said a $27 million loss on new transition participants. These are members who are kind of just generally transitioning statuses and data cleanup that we see. Members who move into disability as well. So something that we would generally have expected here. The second biggest piece that we kind of saw in terms of the loss this year was salaries higher than expected. Again, something that we've seen in a lot of other public funds out there. This high inflationary environment, the cost of living increases that active members do, we need to keep up with. So just in terms of the city as a whole, our aggregate assumption is about 4.7% on average for an increase each year. What we saw was about 70%. So that's great for active members who are, kind of beating the inflationary assumptions, keeping up with this with higher cost of living. Of course, for the pension fund, our projections going forward, that's going to be increased pension benefits. So there's a loss of the system. And then the other couple items are relatively smaller to particularly returning back to status, about $8 million loss. And then mortality experience in retirees, slightly less that's expected is about $3 million.
So good, but not good fun.
Right, so the two big pieces are the kind of the retirements and drops and the salary increases.
And so the total number is 107. Is there a number where you would say to us, well, we should really be worried? It's that liability loss of $10 million.
Some of it is based on the circumstances. You're probably not expecting to get 7 to 10% salary increases every year.
Depends who you talk to.
Then we probably have a discussion of, is this a trend or is this kind of a one-time thing? But maybe that would kind of be the parameter that we would.
And the key is the magnitude of it. So it could be even larger, but we can understand why it's happening, then maybe it's okay. And if it's a one-time thing or a future occurrence, then make adjustments, but it's more, is this something that's unexplainable or is this something, something driving it? Like a couple of years ago, we had a liability gain from the cleanup of the breaks and stuff. So where that was a big gain, there was an explanation.
Got it. So the answer is I didn't even know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't know what's happening until we get to the data. So slide 20, 19 focused on liabilities. This focuses on the assets. A lot of these numbers we've already talked about: market value, return, just over 8%, actual value, 6.5 when you smooth it out. We just generally keep historical asset returns in here just to show you what it's been over the last 3, 5, and 20-year period. Of course, that can significantly change based on the period we looked at, but just for purposes of documenting what it's looked like over the last 20 years, these are the returns over this period. Current return assumption 7.35%. Again, we'll talk about that later as we continue to look at this flight path in terms of reducing the investment return assumption each year. And then finally, the drop account balances. With that huge uptick, are almost about $200 million in account balances. That represents about 2.47% of the market value. So we need to like to just put that in there to kind of see how big that those account balances are represented. Slide 21, this looks at our asset and how we get for actuarial value. So we started at the top with the market value, which is about $7.81 billion. We take out the data fund, which is about $7 million, Our starting market value net of PAF is 7.8 billion. Section below that looks at our deferred gains and losses. Each year, we recognize the gains and losses over a 10-year period. So each year we recognize 10% of that gain or loss. For example, for 2023, we said there was a 6.49% return on an actuarial basis. That represented a $59 million loss on the asset. We recognized 10% of that, or about $6 million, and we declare $53 million, which is in the right-hand column. So we do that for the last 10 years, which means we have $178 million in stored investment losses that we'll recognize over the next 10 years. So we add that into the market value, gets us to 7.98 billion for the actuarial value. We always look at our quarter each year. It's got to be within 80%, 120% of our market value, which we are. So we use the $7.98 billion number as our actuarial. Slide 22, this looks at our RRP notional account balances for 2022 and 2023. Again, this is the additional revenue sources that are coming in above the MMO that are tracked separately. So we start here, 440 million in the top right. We add in the sales tax, which was $92 million last year. We add in the additional contributions, which was roughly $30 million. We accumulate that with the 80% return that we had on the year. That gets us to an ending balance of 598 million. Just again, for the record, that's an extra $600 million just from the sales tax and additional contributions coming in. That does not include the contributions that are above that, which was that 300 million. And then for calculations for the RRP, we take that 600 million subtracted out of the assets, and that's how we calculate the RRP to make sure that's not being used to pay the city's contribution.
All right, just for the newer trustees, if you look at the market value of asset return of minus 6.46% for 2022, and just to illustrate the importance of the additional contributions, you go back to page 8, we went from 54.9% to 57.6% funding, despite that negative return. So as when you did their analysis, they concluded when they did their stress test, even in down markets, the firm would be stable and or do well. And that year is a perfect illustration of that, where you go up a couple points in funding percentage, despite the negative 6% return. So there's less pressure on the CIO.
But he'll still perform too.
And that's still, that's it's interesting.
On the timing of it, before that fifth year, I'm sure you've gone to 21. For 2021, we had $1.2 million gain. I think it was up in 20. And so the loss followed the gain, which helped.
This is why we do the 10-year stream as per review. I've been seeing a lot more volatility, even more so in recent years. Slide 23, let's look at the investment fund, which we briefly talked about earlier. And then, so just as a reminder, it's not on the part here. So 2021, the return was over 28%. 5 years ago, you did create a transfer. We've had discussions with the board in the last 2 years for the 2021 and 2022 evaluation in terms of how that PAF was going to be distributed. And line 2, these are the PAF distributions that occurred and went to payment members. 37 million was paid out in 2022, and about 30 million was paid out last year. So it was almost about $70 million in the last 2 years. So at the beginning of 2023, we take that beginning balance of 34 million, take out 30 million that was paid out. Again, increase this with the 8% investment return, gets us to a balance for this year about $7 million. That's pretty good. Get that.
Brian, I'm not sure if we're going to focus on calculation and determination of how the PAF amounts are determined, but the excess earning, if you if you see line 6 here. For 2023, the 5 years for the asset return was 6.53%. For a PF transfer to occur, we would need it to be at least 100 basis points above the interest rate. That 7.3 would be 2.5. And you know, 6.53 is lower.
Skimmed over a little earlier. is Pension adjustment fund, everything above 1% more than assumed rate of return, it's split in half. Half stays with the fund, half goes to the retirees. The
Right,
pension
it's like a
adjustment.
couple.
So every time we will adjust that rate, it will affect this as well as the drop in interest rate, which is the credit discussion.
Yes.
The market is now lower.
Right.
Yeah.
So more could potentially, that,
Back was 9%.
that one. Possibly.
It's 1% above us.
Fair. You know, something that makes-
Which 1% of the 5% rate?
Yeah, that should be it.
Huh?
Anything above 5% over the assumed rate would be counted.
Which would be virtually, I mean, very unusual to happen.
Yeah, we have a whole set of different discussions.
Chris is good, but that's.
Jumping to slide 24, either our evaluation results for our assets and liabilities. And comparing 2022, 2023. The first number, the present value of future benefits. This represents the money needed today to fund benefits essentially earned to date, as well as expected future benefits. So this number is going to be higher than our actual, and which just includes benefits to date. That's about $14.67 billion in 2023. The second section looks at the resources of how that would be paid for. Again, these are present value of future benefits. So we're using future normal costs. So this is expected employee contributions as well as city normal costs that would be paid in the future as well. We have the market value of assets on hand, line 3, and then line 4. This is kind of the present value of future amortization payments. So all the payments that we expect to pay out in the future. We sum that out, it's about 14.5 billion. Essentially, the difference between these two sections, or the net deficit in line 6, the 178 million. That's basically just the difference between the market value and the actual value. So here we're using the market value in terms of the resources, but for plumbing purposes, we're using the actual value because that's a single for funding purposes. The bottom section, these are the funding ratios we already talked about, highlighted in black. Line 10, this is our funding ratio on an accrual basis. Yes, and if you want to see the numbers behind these, increase from 57 to 62%. And then in line 12, on a market value basis from 55 to over 60%.
Brad, I just wanted to point out line 9, because that's $4.8 billion per year. We really talked about that. That was over 6, like that one.
Yes.
That's some significant increase.
Right. That's a big milestone. That's pretty high.
Yeah, so that one ties really well to slide 15, where we showed the changes in the unfunded liability. How much of that goes to? Slide 25, this is kind of a roll forward of those liabilities and those assets from 2022 to 2023. First column is the liabilities. Second column is the asset. On the third column, this is where Brandon pointed out how we got from the unfunded liability in 2022 to 2023. So it started at about $5.27 billion. That's the top right number. We added what's come in for the year, so the normal cost, and that's the active members. Accruing benefit of about 191 million. That will increase the unfunded liability as more members get the benefits. And the numbers that are kind of decreasing that, those are the city contributions. $1.1 billion from the city, another 17 million wildlife contributions, and then another $120 million from the non-active members themselves. Decreases Administrative expenses were about $9 million last year. By forward expected interest, so as we have the unfunded liability, we do expect that to grow with interest. And we do expect with mortgage payment each year, you have to kind of pay on the interest before you get paid on the principal on that amount. So that gets us to our expected value of 1.5. So we expect the unfunded liability to go to 4.56 billion. What it actually was 4.78 billion when 96. So the difference between those two numbers is our actual cost. So this is kind of the assessment of the liabilities and assets that we did in performance last year. The 223 million we've already talked about, 170 million for liability, 53 million from assets. And then finally, we added the assumption change, which was $60 million for 5 base assumptions. The last 3 charts put together the numbers behind the contributions and how they're calculated to the MMO of our community funding policy. I'm going to start with the MMO and then you guys get treated evaluation fiscal year in 25 numbers. So that's in the right hand column. The top section is the city normal cost. So the normal cost with expenses was about $210 million for this year. We take out the city contributor employee contributions. That's broken up between regular employee contributions, which are about 90 million, as well as the additional tier contribution, as well as the additional contribution. Fire, that's about 31 million. That's us to a city normal cost of about 89 million, which is about the same number it was last year.
So on that, if we read it down to normal cost, get rid of the unfunded members we're putting in more than the cities. That's how it's set up. Is that what I'm saying? With the additional contribution, we agreed to that.
Yes, if the additional contributions are included in there, that is about 120 million of the 210. Yes.
Thank you.
Under payroll.
Anytime we take on.
We up all the time.
Finally, we added the amortization payment. Again, they're contributing more than MMO. So we expect the MMO payment to continue to go down from 582 to 564 million. As a result, the MMO decreases to 653 million on the bottom right. That's not. So we look at the RRP. Got some slight nuances here that change how the calculation of them. First 2 rows are exactly the same as the last page. There will be the normal cost of employee contributions. Line 3, the additional employee contributions that are redoing. Again, those are taken out of the MMO because they're not used to reduce the city's contribution. The city normal cost is $120 million here. And again, the amortization payment, which is based on.
So this flips back to the city.
Right, so this, if you would take that out, to be about 120. And then the amortization payment, which excludes the additional resources, keeps that amortization payment relatively steady from last year. As a result, the RRP contribution is just slightly lower than what it was last year, from 743 to 741.
So just to Brian, again, your point, 10% of the percent of payroll is the annual cost of school and the normal cost. Under RRP, which is actually what's happening, members are paying 4.35, the city is paying 5.84. But had it been, I'm flipping back to the previous page, so under MMO, it would have been, the members are paying 5.88 and the city would give them.
Then finally, our last page in this section, this again, just for tracking purposes, of the funding policy contribution rate, which again hasn't been for about 20 years or so. Just to kind of show you what we're looking at here, the city normal cost. It's the same exact number as would be calculated under the MRL. So the third line from the bottom which is about 89 million for 2025, but that's the same number that we should. The amortization payments, these are things that are being tracked since 1984. So the bases are going to be the periods of these bases are going to be much different than what the other non-marketing policies are. That came out to about 659 million for fiscal year 25. As a result, the city's budget policy is 747 million, which is somewhat of a coincidence, but it is right not where the RFP.
And will that flip as your open account gets larger? Or
Yeah, and you'll see it in.
maybe by next year?
Probably by next year, yeah, you'll kind of see them, because a lot of those older bases are coming off, so the funding policy is basically going to get on, all the RFPs staying flatter. Any questions on the valuation results? Pass it back over to you.
Thank you. So, this our discussion, we talk about this every year, the board reviews it and makes a decision, as to what should be made. So we start by showing you, this is a chart that we show this year, and we've updated it with the latest information, and what this is really showing is the distribution of the discount rates for other public plan systems across the country back from 2001. The latest one shows 2024, but, it looks like, the data is still 2023 because they're still collecting. So if you look at this, the trend overall across the country, especially after this 2008, 2009 financial decline, has been that across the country, systems have been reducing the discount rate assumption as the expectations for long-term acquisition have declined. Philadelphia, currently, we're at 7.35% up here in this range. So a little bit higher, median is 7%, and the general trend is that many systems are reducing to 7 or lower, some are going even as low as 5.
You showed us this like 5, 6, 7 years ago. We were off the chart, right? We were. So we move faster than other funds.
Right, and that going on to the next page, a little bit more thinking about this, it's for that, but they'll sit down.
We don't want to fall into the water.
Making large decreases in the discount rate could increase the contribution significantly, and as Stefan pointed earlier, may cause a financial shock to the system or the city's budget. And what's unique about Philadelphia, there is a mandated required contribution under MNO. So the city must make the MNO. So if the board was to approve a large flip discount rate increase, and that shoots the contribution up, the city is on the hook to pay that. Other systems, on the other hand, there are many systems that may have done those large increases, 100 basis points in 1 year, but may not be contributing the full contribution if they're not required.
So it means a little less.
So, so it's, so we're very comfortable, under the ASOPs as actuaries, we have to sign off on this assumption as well. We're very comfortable with this flight path to de-risk, look at it here, it's a prudent way to manage with the costs and reduce the risk profile.
One of the questions, the conversations Brian and I have often is there a point where we're on our flight that down, where okay, this is kind of where we should stop?
So the 7% range is probably a good one for now. I mean, it's over a whole decade, we had this very low interest rate environment, and we have this couple of years with higher rates. We don't think, at least for now, that that's long term. But the de-risk plan to go 5 to 10 basis points a year, we think about 7 maybe right now is what we are comfortable with.
So one thing you've also seen in kind of recent years, 23, 24, a lot of things have changed in this post-COVID environment, and investment advisors are constantly changing their assumptions going forward. So you kind of see not much of a change in terms of what the assumptions for plans have been. It's kind of stayed right around that, below that 7% for 3 years now. I think a lot of people are now doing kind of a wait and see approach in terms of where kind of the market environment goes in terms of investment assumptions. So that's probably kind of right on track in terms of what we've been seeing.
Why should we lower it then this year then? Why should we think about lowering it if we're comfortable at 7.35%? Like, so that's my concern too. At what point do we stop? Because we were 9% for years. We were 9%. So, and y'all usually had that little digital thing where y'all say we do this, that, and that, but I don't see that this year. So at what point, back to Rob's question, do we stay where we at?
So that's where we're thinking around 7% is a good, and it is a balance between what's your investment policy, what's your expected return, on the assets, but 7% is where we would be.
So those 7% would take us another 10 years almost to get there. Like how many years? Because we only had 7.35.
Steps.
So if it's
7
5
years.
basis points, and in the past some years you've done that, but yes, if it's 5 each year.
And it also, I guess, doing it gradually, gives the opportunity to reset, is this, we want to, is 7% still the goal? Like, the market as a whole changes.
We've talked, finished that, but this is why it matters. Is we pay consultants, we pay Chris's staff. We spend money to beat the average fare, right? If there comes a point, we have to question. We're not there. Just to be, I'm not. Point where if you're gonna put it on cruise control, do you need to spend that kind of money, right? And that's where we don't want to get to. We expect to do better because of the money we invest in the intelligence, and we have access to so many asset classes that the average fare wouldn't have. So we expect to be higher. But you're saying 7 would be a comfortable spot to be in today's future projection environment.
Right, for the pension fund and the discount rate. Of course, with your investments, for the pension fund, if your expectation is 7%, you have a higher chance of beating it. If you're at 7.5%, 8%, you're having to take more risk to meet those higher returns and less of a probability to meet them. So it's a balance between reducing the risk and
I just want to make sure we're not winning by reducing this.
So I want to make sure we're not.
Right, you can always beat it if you reduce it, if you're expecting. There comes a point where we expect to do better than standard based on the money we spend to do better.
Who's paying for us to do better? Like, I'm saying, is it on the back of the plan participant? Or is it or is the city helping in
Even we go
keeping
into,
it stable? I mean,
Yeah.
that's my question too. I know what you're saying. But I know like, for years, we carry the load because the city did. So I wanna know if we keep lowering, who's carrying the load? And who's benefiting
Yeah.
from it? So
the
that's,
city contribution goes up. If
Okay.
that's happening, yes.
okay.
anytime the discount rate is going down, liabilities are going up, contributions are going up, so more money is coming in.
Yeah, but no, earlier you said, Brian asked a question, and you said that we would get to a point where the members' contribution will override the city's. So the members' contribution be more than what the city contribution be, which means the members are paying.
If we were paying by the MMO, but under the
Yeah, but that-
RRP, it doesn't work that way. The RRP, which is what we use, the city pays more.
Okay, I'll wait till you get there.
So on this page here, we're showing a further 5%, 5 basis points decrease, but it just happened to reduce. A further 5%, typically, the net impact, as I said, reducing the discount rate increases liability. That increases the unfunded.
Get back to the PowerPoint. The increase is in paying off the unfunded liability, right? That's what's going on. It's not, what impact is lowering the discount rate have on the normal cost?
It increases the number of.
Increases both, okay. So that in the RRP, the city contribution will go up more than the members' contribution. Right.
The 5 basis points would increase the RRP one time, if it became 50 by 6.4 million. the unfunded liabilities would go up 16.8 million, and the funded ratio would go down to 3%. On the next page, we actually show a 5-year projection of various scenarios for changing that discount rate from 5, 10, 15, and 30 basis points to give the board some information on what the 5-year projection would be for these changes. So we start here by showing.
Sorry, can you back to the page we compare our discount rate to the, you know, if you talked before about plans that lower their rates by like a full percent, but then don't actually pay according to that, are they included here? So our 735 is probably more meaningful than some of the ones that are lower than us.
Yes, that was exactly my point. with
Yeah.
that, Yes.
Do you know what the median or the mean is for plans that actually contribute the full amount?
Right.
That's what we were just, is there a way to,
But some places already,
filter that
We can
data.
find that. I don't know, because. Right, because this is the data we collect, National collects it. Off the top of my head, I know a few systems that might be even, 7% or lower. Couple systems that are, not making the contributions,
right,
but I don't know about the whole. yeah.
right, so then you're only assuming 7 on paper. In reality, if you're contributing at a level that's 75, it's a fake
Well-
assumption.
We may be much closer to the beginning
That's what
than
I'm-
this graph shows.
That's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm.
But just contributing on the RRP, you're contributing more than just what the.
Right.
Yeah, so even if, maybe something's a lower assumption than what we currently have, right?
Yeah.
It would be a lower amount than what the RRP following, right? Depending on the size.
but then like going back to they say, how many plans that are making their contributions are operating at a low at 7 or below? Because what is the medium discount rate? Because I know what is the median for the average fund, public funds, who are funded
Yeah.
and are contributing to the fund? What's that median?
Right, so I would say for this survey, majority systems would be paying in. The systems that are possibly not paying in are in pretty deep financial distress. And, so I wouldn't say that's the norm, but there are some systems, at least I know of 2 systems that are at the 7%, but trying to contribute, but not able to contribute at that level. Some of the severely distressed systems across the country, Illinois, state of New Jersey, have not contributed historically, and though they're reducing discount rates, may not still be able to. So it's not the majority, and I don't know that we have the information to pull them out, but the point being that this flight path of 5 basis points is good, and of course, I know the big question is 7 the right number
Yeah.
or before? We could wait and see how it goes in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
With even capital.
That's another reason, to Brett's point, that by paying the RRP, we're essentially paying more than if we were just doing 7%, 7.35% discount rate at 7.35. Do you know, using the MMO, what the equivalent is, like, you take what we actually pay under the RRP, what that would mean in terms of a discount rate?
We could come back to you on that, and in terms of the extra contribution, so we could do it on the RRP basis. What does this mean? What, if this was the, what discount rate would produce that contribution?
Okay, great. Yes, you articulated better than I did. That's, yeah.
And can you also tell me like, CalPERS, CalSPERS, Texas, Dallas, those pension funds are not operating below, they're not unfunded, like we are unfunded. So what are their, I don't want to say, Pennsylvania, but I'll say Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, I know Pittsburgh is unfunded,
Not that we're comparable.
not that we compare, that's right.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the discount rates are for some of the companies, but I am aware that they're better funded. I expect that the discount rate is probably 7 or lower, but we could certainly look into that.
Thank you.
Chris, just look it up, CalSTRS is 7.
CalPERS is 6.8. New Jersey, however, which you brought up, which is one of the ones I was thinking of, is 7.
They don't,
And they have been
Doing stuff.
contributing for years. Well, I'm just saying, they've been under.
But they can really turn that around, so y'all watch out for them, they can really turn that right around.
Yeah, they're contributing.
Right, they are now.
They can really turn it right around.
Must be
Started.
lottery revenue.
Yeah, they had somebody that knew it wasn't contributing. Okay, thank you, for this. Mhm.
I delayed the most fun part of it.
Yeah, they were the slide.
Yeah.
We do have so many members on the board, so I will be,
They don't know the joy that they're in for here. They don't know the joy they're in for here.
So something if I put the, over here. This one we call it reform protection. We will switch over to our light model in a bit here. I just want to show you what you're seeing here on page 34. Over to the left here. This, for our baseline projection, we're assuming that the expected return of 7.35% is earned in every single year front. We show two graphs here. The top one is the assets and liabilities, similar to the historical trend. These are the future trends for the liability shown in the gray bars. We expect that the liabilities will increase over time, members are accruing more benefits, and so they're expected to grow over time. The lines are the assets, the green and blue look very close here because, there's a little bit of smoothing going on there, but generally stay close to each other. But the key here is the funded ratio up top. We're currently at 62.2% of this valuation. And you could see that based on the RRP, I'm showing this based on projection based on RRP, they continue to contribute on the RRP. We're expected to be fully funded by 2032, so 8 short years.
But this year it starts 2030, so for us it'd be fiscal year 2033, okay?
For the drop in contribution,
Yeah,
yes. Of the lag. So the graph below, to your point, shows the expected contributions to be able to stay on that path of paying off the unfunded liability. The red portion is what is required under the MMO. We show the additional sales tax in blue, showing the additional revenue that's expected to come in. The projection is provided to us by the city. The black bars are showing the municipal tier contribution and police and fire extra contribution. This is the additional funding that members are paying to pay off the funded sooner. And the yellow portion shows the member contribution. So the key line here is the blue line, which shows the revenue recognition policy contribution. You can see it stays relatively stable from 2024 through 2032. And then it drops to, this is the conversation we're having earlier, it drops down to the non-top level. This is because the unfunded liability has not been paid off and the cost to the system are the annual accruals. Of course, this is what we expect based on the projections. Each year experience is different. We're gonna update this, but even just comparing to last year, I believe we're 1 year sooner than we'd expected to be fully funded. Has the city been paying on MMO, where the RRP, which is designed to pay the unfunded sooner, has the city continued on the MMO, the full funding would be a 3-year after the 2022. So not 3 years after 2075. You do that. So the RRP is steadily paying off the unfunded and perhaps even in comparison to them.
Question on this, that's a question for you like this about. If we get to 100%, when we get to. It would be unreasonable, I would think, I'm not defining it correctly, to fund your pension fund at 135%. So would we go back, would it be an option to go back to the MMO? Would that be the obvious choice?
Yeah.
So that's my point earlier, to that point, Because they didn't, contribution drops
But
by
even
just
if you,
700.
It's actually
even
less than what the MMO would have.
if you look at MMO, you get 120%.
Which was
So
a
like, think at that point, like who's up here?
gray bearded lassie.
Oh,
No, I mean, really, that's my point, to bring it full circle. Yeah, but it's important to get there. Not
Yeah.
only does it open up a ton of money in the general fund, it gives you a lot more negotiating power for rates, it does so many things. Yeah, even more power, it's not power. We're critical, we're close, we had a big battle years ago, and here we are, so we're within 8 years,
That's all you stay the course.
as long as we.
Historically, the system has struggled to see the improvement in funding stuff, but to your point, putting in changes that actually made a difference, and then the discipline to be sticking to those, commitments of paying in RRPs, members also committing to paying extra contributions to pay down the unfunded. You've actually seen the plan falling into place. Participation for, like I said, over 10 years. Commitment from the city to pay the board, discussing this every single year, looking at the discount rate, making good decisions and sticking to the policy.
Just to add to what you said, excluding this year, going back to last year, the average public pension fund, I think Bill was every year, the average increase from the point of 2016 to last year, was somewhere around 2.7 to 3%. In the aggregate,
That's less than what we did.
in the aggregate, ours was close to 15% funding increase. So close to. Jack, you looked at consumption, which has a large influx of money, and a lot of changes to foster everything. Thought that maybe they had a frequency larger than we was, but it was not the case. I'm gonna say that our trajectory is probably unprecedented during that, from the 2016 period to the present, as far as followers. It's consistent.
Yes, and then you can later had 17 years. Regularly.
We also show projection funding policy, just to make the point that the funding policy is a different schedule for the amortization payment. So as it stands today, the funding policy requires lower amounts in the future, which means the 80% funded is now 2030 and doesn't even reach 100%. Over the projections. We've always done stress testing. Recently, just we codified in the law that stress testing is required. We flipping here to page 37. I'm just going to show this is to illustrate the impact of that 7.25%. Whereas the assumption it will earn it each year, in actuality, is not going to happen. Of course, there's going to be ups and downs with market volatility. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's going to get more every year.
And really, this just goes to show that smoothing works even with, on average, with varying returns, that average 7.35 over that period. System still expected to be fully funded by 2032. Of course, the timing of that can change things, but it definitely is more resilient than contributing to residential. So with that, I will switch to our live model. And we can change any of the assumptions or expected return, whatever we would like to see. What we're showing here up top, this is based on RRP. What is the current year RRP change, unchanged? And then any changes we make, you can see the impact of what the 5-year RRP changes would be. We're expecting 7.35 each year. The discount rate for 2023, 7.35. 2024 is also 7.35. And based on this, expected funded ratio 139.9. But again, I think we keep our eye on this 2032, get to 100% funded as we get closer, there possibly will be,
Can you put in 7.3?
So if, so 2024 or 2023? The 7.3 for 2023?
Four.
Four.
Oh, you were.
24. Alright. So here you see that the discount rate changes in 2024, the first year that impacts this fiscal year, and in 2036, RRP goes up 6.6 million. And over this 5-year period, we're paying an additional 28.5 million. The 80% funded rate,
Okay, so
yeah, 80% funded and 100 remains the same because we're increasing contributions to pay for this. Right, so this additional 28 million is funding so that we're targets are still remaining. Thank you. Down below the RRP, you can see, I mean, it's slightly higher, but still in the same.
really, that's 60, it's a 60 million over the 5 years.
It's 28.5.
Oh, if I was 20.5, okay.
I think for the strategy.
We need the city contribution to go up. And the funding percent goes down a little, but we still get the 80 and 100% at the same time. I think we go, if I remember correctly from another earlier slide, we go from 62.2 to 61.9. Right around 62%. Just like, yeah, it's hard for us back here to see.
Sorry. But we could show different expected returns if that's something you'd like to see. We're able to, with, some of you've seen this before, we're able to show you.
So what if we be aggressive and go to 7?
So if we did that, so this is again 2024, we did 7%. So 7% is a one-time big increase. Contributions, this is 2024, so the contributions for 2026 will go up 46 million in that first year. And then 51 million in the following 3 years. So a total of 200 million extra in contributions over the 5-year period. Yes, because, and the funding for 100% does push back 1 more year. And that's because we're also expecting the assets, so in line with this maybe is that the asset investments may be in less risky assets, but if the investment continue to on the correct trajectory, then we're gonna see the contributions are coming in higher, the returns will be what they'll be, and so likely this might be.
Which is the 62.2%.
So for this is in 2024, so was it 60, what was it?
62.
So
So it's 62 to 723. That's.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah.
so 65% drops to 63.
Okay, so it basically cut that 2%.
But if the budget is there and the contributions that have been historically made in the last 5 years have been above the RRP, it varies of course.
Right.
But they've been above the RRP, ranging from 38 to 75.
We were at 7%.
Oh. But if the contributions are already coming in. So is that, so going back to 7.3 maybe, you want to see different asset returns here?
Sure.
So
Usually you pick a year, right?
1998 did here. So this is saying if the market is a 60-40 traditional mix for equity and bonds, and if these are actual returns from the markets back to 1998, and if we go back then, over this period, the return is 6.85. We can see a variation, and more importantly here, where the contribution could vary.
And what's the,
Volatility down here because the fund is dipping into being 100% funded and then coming out of it. So we'd definitely be looking at maybe changing the funding policy as we get to that.
yeah. So is it 28 and 30?
33, yeah, 2028 and 2033. And again, by nature of our policy, that's requiring if there's any losses, we're trying to pay them off based on the RP money. It's the layered amortization of each loss paid over 20. But it does go to show, once it's close to or around 20%, the volatility, there would be more volatility, and really even the system has more assets.
Right.
The impact is more because you have more to possibly pay on you.
Yeah, that looks much harder from a budgeting perspective.
Right, we would have,
Yeah, yeah.
we would have further discussions on how this volatility. And then under,
But this would be
it's an
what we would
alternate
assume,
funding.
right? This isn't, we wouldn't be assuming this, or, right, we'd be assuming. When we put in the assumed rate of return, we're really assuming for each year. So in terms of the calculation you did, this is what you would be giving some future finance revenue.
Right, so it would still be on the 7.3 discount rate. But yeah, I think that once it's over 100%, there's likely to be an exception. Close to it, and we would be talking about this.
I see other,
Oh, yeah, that was causing the volatility, but which going forward.
oh, look at that. That's interesting.
So really the point being the market volatility can change. Really, every year, track progress. So anything else on the life model? We would like to see.
Did anybody want to say anything else? Second.
I have a couple of slides here. It's really just, this is just sort of to let you know it's an update. As actuaries, we are required to abide by what's called the actuarial standards of practice, and periodically these standards of practice are updated. There is an update to what's called ASOP 4, which deals with the measurement of mortality. This is for effective evaluation after February 2023, and so July 1, 2023 will be the first valuation after this comes in place. The major changes is that we're not required to disclose what's called a low default risk obligation measure. Really what this is called a LDROM measure is saying, what would the liability be if you're using a discount rate that's more, that eliminates investment. It's for disclosure purposes, does not impact funding. We're going to add a paragraph to disclose this and a couple of other requirements. You have to assess the patients of the funding policy. We're already doing this in our current evaluation reports. And then we have to disclose a reasonable, what's considered a reasonable actual repayment contribution with PRB, MMO, funding policy following those requirements. So for the LDROM measure, we'll be using this pension liability index, which produced a 4.91% rate. So if you look at what's the liability going to be at this 4.91%, it's going to be 16.43 billion. This compares to the 12.8 billion at the 7.35%. And one way to look at this
Is that nationwide, that 4.91, not specific to us?
is that we do look at your specific
Okay,
benefit
so it.
payment.
Okay.
Based on that pension liability index. But the way to look at this would be that any pension fund is going to invest in a diversified portfolio with the goal to achieve the best return possible at an acceptable level of risk. And so this difference between the 16.43 to 12.2 billion is really, you can look at it as the expected savings from investing in a diversified portfolio that's going to give you those future investment returns, or the expected cost of eliminating that diversified. So really, again, for disclosure purposes, and with that, you will see that there'll be a section in the valuation. So that was all we had. We do have the actual evaluation process, the tank, but it's.
I think all the new members need to be walked through the end.
Five. Irrelevant to how pension system works. The blue, so this pension, fund is the tank, the green is the water in the tank, and it's not illustrated with exactly your funding level, but it's really to just, show you the process. The money coming into the fund would be from employer contributions, that's the city's contributions and member contributions. There's valves here, which you can increase, decrease, these contributions coming in. The red out here are the benefit payments. Again, those can be the valves, you could change the benefit payments, which would increase the flow out of the tank. And then there's the administrative expenses, which must also be paid from. And then we have the.
Very small site. It's by far the smallest, but.
Hopefully it's a relatable tenant. Have a way to show that.
That's a big site.
But it really shows where the sources of income into a fund, and the purpose of this fund is to pay basic things. So that's all we had. I'm sorry, just actually introduce, I know we have a few new members here. I'm Anu Patel. Zach, Alan, and Brett Warren are part of our core team. Once again, is not here. It continues to be an additional resource. And for those of you who do know Ken very well, Ken finally officially retired.
Oh, no.
He had been working in the background peer reviewing for the last couple of years, kind of semi-retired, or trying to retire. But finally. He's kind of sweet. Good, he has hopefully more time now.
To be honest, these reports have gotten a lot better since Kenny. And he was gonna.
Which Ken used to give us?
But they helped us, so we don't want to give it to them.
No, he stood there, I remember saying, and one day when this is not my problem. You guys will hopefully be a version.
Ken was great, but it changed.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
If you want to vote on earnings assumptions, or you want to wait to get some of the information will be requested before we do that? Not really. Okay. So is there a motion?
Motion to reduce the assumption to 7.30.
Okay, so it's been moved and properly seconded, so we reduce the earnings from 7.35 to 7.3. Hold the roll. Billy? Ryan? Paul? Renee? Chris? Approves. Adam approves. Marcia? Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you guys very much. Great presentation. That really helped.
Thank you. So this is for 2024, right? So we do have, this year, we have actual 5 forms which will be completed. Those are due at the end of March. And we'll be producing our final value.
Great.
So thank you all for your time and for the great question.
Great. Okay. Let's go to agenda item 3. You need a couple minutes to clean up before. Why don't we take a 5-minute break so you can, yeah.
Yes, you thought you had.
All right.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Get going.
Can you pull that door from? Yeah. Oh,
Agenda item 3, the local brokerage report. Sure. Thanks.
So as a reminder, the funds, fixed income and equity managers are on an aspirational basis. They do direct 35% of their trades to approved local minority stable to women-owned firms, all subject to low cost, best execution, et cetera. A good year for the equity managers, 51% of their trades to qualifying firms in the fourth quarter, 44% year to date. Only two firms I quickly highlight. Capital Group at 12%, as you know, they're a recent manager, they were at 0, they're ramping up their program. So the one that we're gonna follow up with on this list, because they did drop from the mid to low 30s to 19%. Year over year's investors group, so we'll report back to that on the board. And all the other managers, no real concerns.
Thank you.
Fixed income, slightly under the aspirational targets, 29%, fourth quarter, 32%. Annually, the one manager, not all that far from the aspirational target, but did drop year over year and we follow under them. Is Longfellow at 30%. And like we've talked about some of the areas they traded and the limited number of firms at any time. So I'm not concerned with that number. And SIM has continued to make steady improvements from 0 to 1% all the way to the high 20s, low 30s.
Any questions? Or you all can take it. Better one.
Relatively flat month for the markets. The fund was down 20 basis points versus the target. It's negative 30 basis points. All asset classes were largely in line or just above, just below their target. No concerns, immediate concerns with any of the managers. I would just note, the real estate managers on page 21, Clarion and UBS, we have the quarterly numbers from them. We continue to discuss concerns around real estate. A couple of the articles that went out yesterday, in their estimates highlighted, the Financial Times article highlighted the new challenges and concerns of some managers, some government officials that banks may not adequately capitalize against some of their commercial banking losses. Relying on historical capitalization metrics as opposed to what we're seeing more recently. So I think that's something to definitely keep an eye on, to be conscious of before, allocating any further dollars in the immediate future to that asset class. I don't know if you have other comments on the
Well, just broadly speaking, I would say that the portfolio has continued to hold up really nicely. January was a volatile month, but we held up better than the broader market. Some of the reasons for that were more large cap tilt on the equity side. Small caps and mid caps sold off in January. When we think about the fixed income allocation, fixed income does have some exposure to high yield as an example. That was beneficial in terms of the overall performance. I'm gonna say, I think I shouldn't, but I'm gonna say the global.
We going there? All right.
You will see that as the broader market sold off, global little ball did hold up positively for the month. So you put all those things together and it led to some pretty good downside protection for us. So
I remember there were some months when you didn't go to the global ball.
Yes. All of a sudden, you're very proud.
There must be something in the room today.
that's really it from this thing. Nothing else.
As long as it doesn't to, oh, there's still a seizure at. Yeah, good.
Any other management talk about or?
Well, I would say that the, I think a couple of things, bigger picture, we have the rebalancing, to fixed income rate taking place.
We're gonna look a little, but for a while, we'll look a little off.
Yeah, exactly. And then the strategy of looking at, not looking at, but really following, the Fed's, meeting, has also been, just a very thoughtful way to balance out some of the volatility in the market as we rebalance it. So really not much to report as we think about, the rebalancing into fixed income. The strategy there makes a lot of sense. And then, everything else has really been covered with Chris with respect to real estate and just looking at other areas of, further review in the portfolio.
How we looked in February.
Every thus far has been, pretty decent. The preliminary numbers show us a little bit, ahead of the benchmark.
There's just under 1% policy. Basis points, so that's really a difference.
And then today, why?
Yes, especially the NASDAQ.
Yeah.
So the challenge will be, the wild swings that we're seeing in the market, the challenge will be whether, seeing whether this is going to be prolonged, right? Is it just a pop from NVIDIA? Is this a pop from the feel good news that the market always looks for? Or as the year progresses, that we're going to look at the economy perhaps being in more delicate position. So if rates do come down, there'll be less of a bump because it's to offset a slowdown. So is the rally is some smoke and mirrors right now? Is there some real teeth to it? I guess that's the big question, I think.
Other questions? I think the new world's all out for you. So
Absolutely.
take the signal then 5.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a couple of things super quickly. It was the RFP was obviously touched on at length during the actuarial presentation. Quickly mentioned the rebalancing. We are scheduled to receive the bulk of the RFP in March, so we will review with the board our recommendations for the annual sources and uses of that capital. So that'll be next month. We do have a few RFPs either up for, that will be up soon. One for, companies to monitor the securities restrictions is up. The alternatives consultant is up. The general consultant will be up either tomorrow or Monday. I got documents back from OEM this morning. And then the last one that will go in the next few weeks is the proxy voting consultant contract is up in the basis. So we will come to the board at the table with an email about committees and various things to work through those RFPs. And then we're still on track to start bringing private equity managers. On the securities lending, 128,000 and change for the month. 52.06 million since the board began the program. Diverse and local managers AUM on a combined basis is over 61%. The MWEE manual was broken out. So we're going to 50. We could 54, nearly 54.7%. Local and surrounding counties, almost 9.5%. And the upcoming board meetings are calendared for March 28th, April 25th, and April 23rd.
Sorry, Carla.
Some might need to ask for change for May 23rd. I'm waiting for you to send the conference announcement in the day, so I think it's one to be.
Got it. Okay. All right. Any new business for investments? Old business, and soon, recommend that investments were adjourned and called the board into session. Is there a motion to ratify the combining estimate committee?
So moved.
And seconded. Thank you. I'll call the roll. Frank Swan. Approved. Paul. Approved. Brian. Billy. Approved. Carol.
Approved.
Marcia.
Approved.
Adam. Approved. And Christian. Approved. Motion carries. Any new business? Any old business? Then it is moved, probably taken to be adjourned. We are done. Thank you all very much. Yeah.